What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so this week we just had a quick fix on how to embrace randomness. So now we're going to do a full-length
Yeah.
episode on just kind of whatever's going on. A
Random.
little bit of randomness. We're going to practice embracing randomness. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've had life sometimes is challenging, sometimes is fun, and it kind of waffles back and forth between challenging and fun. How's your week been?
Yeah, no. It's funny. I agree with you. I think I find myself like it's funny. Like I noticed this more recently, but like I have these weeks where I'm busy and I'm focused and I have momentum and I'm doing these things, I'm getting things done. And I generally feel really good. The time's going by really fast. But then I have weeks where things slow down and they're always hard at first because it's like I almost like I'll have some time to do stuff and I don't know what to do with myself. And like I have plenty of things I could do to use that time, hobbies, maybe stuff to do around the house, whatever, spending time with friends and loved ones, all these things. But like it's almost like when it happens, sometimes I don't know how to I don't know what to do with it, especially when it's unexpected. And I think that's interesting because I notice like it's funny when the more you become aware of this, the more you realize how all these things affect our mood in such dramatic ways, like boredom, being tired. We talked about this before, right? Not being hungry. I mean, all these things really do influence us so much. And the more you become aware of it, the more you realize, like, wow, I am really like unpredictable in a very significant way. But I also like have to keep reminding myself how to deal with these things. It's interesting.
Mm. And also, I always find, at least for myself, that like when I'm really busy, I keep desiring to not have anything to do. And then when I don't have anything to do, I like really desire to be busy. So it's just like, can't I just be content with where I am at the moment? Like, why does it always
Yeah.
have to be the other thing out there?
Yeah, well, it's funny too. It's like I noticed too, like, or I'll one time, when you're really busy, you'll one time like play video games or read or something, and then you get that downtime. It's like you don't want to do any of those things.
Mhm.
Like I don't know what happens in that switch. I don't know if it's like, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I've been finding that for me, it's always at like first 5 minutes that's so hard. Like, especially when I don't have anything to do. Because when my life is loaded down with stuff to do, it's just kind of like, okay, just gonna focus
The
on
grind.
today, just gonna
Yeah.
focus on this task I gotta do here. And you just get through it. But like when I don't have anything to do, all of a sudden, like I have these hours, and now it's just like, oh, nothing's good enough. But it's literally just that first 5 minutes. So like there are all these things that I like to do, and it's just, for me, like I enjoy painting models for fun to
Yeah.
relax. But it's always, you know, getting the water to wash off the brushes, and like getting the wet palette set out and figuring out which characters I'm going to paint. It's literally the 5 minute setup that's the giant obstacle that prevents me from actually sitting down and
Oh,
enjoying what I do.
yeah. Isn't it funny too how you'll like imagine that being way harder than it is? Like I'll have time when I want to go take photos, for instance, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get my camera, I gotta get in the car, I gotta pick somewhere to go, and then get there, and I could just sit here and be miserable. It's like, yeah, it's really funny. We make everything so hard. And it's funny too, because the other thing I found myself running into, actually, yeah, why not? Might as well talk about this too. Like we all want meaning and we all have ideas of success and achievement and trying to make ourselves better. And like I also find myself too, I hit this thing where I just want to be there now all the time. And it's not like a bad thing. It's just like, I think we talked about this before, but like, like trying to learn something new and you hit that, like, especially like in the middle, once you're past sort of all the easy jumps in the beginning and you kind of nailed it, you just want to be like then an expert. You know what I mean? You don't want to do all the middle crap, which is often usually the hardest, which is, the grind, the repetition, the then learning the more challenging skills and all of that stuff and building. And like that takes the longest, but you just want to blow by it. And it's
Mhm.
also, I think, I find with myself the time when I can get most disheartened.
Yeah, because it's just, I mean, you know where the beginning is, you know where the end is, but that whole middle territory is just like wading through clouds and confusion.
And you have like the knowledge to like, comprehend it more and ask bigger questions. So you also kind of, in a sense, know how little you know. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh yeah.
You know,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like so many things. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like one thought that's helped me in that. I think it was Denzel Washington was doing like a graduation speech. And he was talking about how that dream in your heart, whatever it is, that thing that you really want, is actually from the universe telling you that you're going to get it. So instead of a lot of us have this goal of something that we want, whether it's going to be some type of degree, whether it's going to be some amount of money, whether it's going to be recognition from people, whatever these goals are that we have. And we think that like the goals are outside of us, that they're hard to achieve, that maybe they're even impossible. But what he said is that that goal is proof that the universe is giving this to you. You just have to turn yourself in that direction and start doing the actions that are in that direction, because that gift is already yours. It's just going to take a little bit of time to come to fruition.
I like that. I was listening to this podcast this morning. I think it might have been This American Life, but they were talking about students in poor schools that get these scholarships because they're gifted into these universities, and but a lot of them don't finish because they get overwhelmed, and they, even though they made it there and even though they deserved it, they can't see themselves as a person who really deserves it or really belongs. And I think that's the same idea, right? Like it's thinking of or making yourself think of yourself as someone who really is this person, who really does deserve it. Because it's a challenge. When we don't have that self-concept that matches what our goal is, even if we deserve it, even if we're putting in the work, even if we're doing everything, it's still, you can forever feel like an outsider. And it's a bad feeling,
Dude, it's the imposter syndrome. So like
yeah.
when I was in vet school, they talked about that a lot. It was just the feeling that you don't belong here. But like the fact that you're here is proof that you belong here. However, one thing,
yeah, right.
one thing I like really, really hate against universities is the professors intentionally want you, like a lot of times they intentionally want you to feel like you don't belong here and you're not good enough. And like, yeah, I get it. Like back in the 1950s, that was a great motivational strategy, telling people they're pieces of whatever and they don't
Yeah.
belong here. But like nowadays, you don't need to do that. It just doesn't,
No.
it doesn't hold the same value, because guess what? Like people do belong here. And just because you got some type of tenured position at a university doesn't mean that the sun shines out of your ass. Like go work in the real world, So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's funny too. I think a lot of that too is also like trying to keep up an image, and also a lot of them just are not. I mean, the sad truth is a lot of them aren't necessarily good teachers, which doesn't mean they're good at instructing people. They might be good researchers, and it's a funny situation where you have these people that might be brilliant in something, but they're not necessarily brilliant, or they're not necessarily, and it's like it makes it very challenging, I think, for them to interact with everyone.
Yeah, being a teacher is, I think, being a teacher is actually challenging because you have to meet the student on a level to where you can transmit whatever you're trying to teach them. It's not like being a
Yeah.
plumber where you just fix a toilet. And
this is the thing. This is what I think, at least, and this is from a fair amount of time as experience. I think as a good teacher, you have to be able to interpret what they say intelligently in a way that they then understand, so that you then can answer it. Like, so when somebody asks a question that's ill-formed, or you have to be able to put it in words that make sense for them, and then be able to answer it on terms that they understand, to bring them up then. Right? Which is hard. That part is hard, but it doesn't mean that everyone, just because they are a professor, is a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem.
Yeah. So let's see. I was definitely struggling a little bit over the past few weeks, and it's funny because it goes from like struggle to just to like getting by in a very good sense. It just keeps going back and forth and you never know where it is. But the one thing that I really enjoy about getting older, so like everybody's so scared of getting older, and they're like, if I'm not a billionaire by the time I'm 21, my life's a failure. And it's just like, but like one of the greatest benefits I see of getting older, aside from just getting more handsome every year, is that
that's true. Yeah, it does happen.
You just see these patterns play out in life. Like, just getting able to sit back and watch, like being like, oh, I'm struggling so hard. And then we're like, oh, life is easy. Oh, struggling so hard. Oh, life is easy. And when I was younger, I actually thought like that was my life. When I was struggling, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, my life is terrible. And then when my life was easy, I was like, oh, this is the breeze. I can do this forever. But now as I get older, I start to see the pattern and it just goes back and forth. And it becomes more of like a comedy than anything else. Cause I'm like, oh, here's this part again. Oh, here's that part again. Oh, this is gonna be good. Let's see how I react to this.
I think that's the trick about it, though, is being able to laugh at it because it is like you see the same things happen again and again and again and again, right? And like you have to be able to laugh at it and realize, like, no, I think that's a good point, though, like that things get easier because you've experienced them more, right? It's not like, and the immediacy with which I think, even though I just mentioned this, but the immediacy, like when you're younger, you want things to happen now, but you also realize, like, I think as I've gotten older, you realize things take longer. You have a better perspective on time, on what you're capable of in time, which I think is awesome because that's been super helpful too.
You know,
Yeah.
with you saying that, I think it's really important for people to sit down with a journal and figure out what they actually want to accomplish in their life. Because most people are
Yeah.
stuck on this treadmill, like trying to keep their head above water. And they're not really up to anything. They're so like sitting down with a journal and being like, okay, if I can only accomplish one thing with my life, like what do I want that one thing to be? Or if I can only accomplish three things with my life, and having these be big things, because we've talked about the saying previously where you can uh in 1 year you can only accomplish less than you think you would, but in a decade you can accomplish a lot more than you
Oh
think you
yeah.
should be able to. So like actually sitting down on big things that you want to accomplish with your life, and even being unreasonable, like I mean, I do this to myself too, where I'm like, oh no, that's not possible. And it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Why? If
Yeah.
if anybody's ever done it in the history of the universe, then what's possible for one is possible for me. And if no one's ever done it, it's still possible for me because maybe no one's never tried it with my skill set.
Or maybe the technology wasn't available that made it easier and made it possible. It's funny. I think about that all the time because, like, people are so quick to say, especially with like, you know, um, big problems in the world, like, well, one person can't solve it. It's like, but they have, or they've made a huge dent in it in the past, right? So, like, it clearly is possible. You just have to put yourself out there and do it.
Hmm.
And ask yourself, is it really worth it? Is this something that I see myself doing? Is it really worth it for me? That's something I think that's super important. I think it's something that you need to do over and over because I find myself struggling with that too a lot too. Because it's just like, even when you have an idea of your goals, if they're not clear, sometimes it's easy to kind of start to feel ambivalent towards them, or like maybe they don't fit for you or whatever. But revisiting them too to remind yourself like what is really valuable to you.
Hmm.
I think that's our values too. I think really people need to sit down and really think about what is valuable to them, what really matters. Because like I think so many of us are, we think we have values, but they're just BS that we've taken on from the world around us, and they're not really ours. And
Yeah.
and really having your own makes it your life.
Well, I mean, one kind of simple way to do that is just sit down with your. They say use your checkbook because, but people don't use checkbooks anymore. So sit down with your banking app and look at where you spent your money, and look at just the past month where you've spent your money. How much have you spent at Starbucks? How much have you spent on Amazon? How much have you spent? And and that will actually tell you what your values are. Now, once you know what your values are, then figure out, are these things actually valuable to me? Like, am I spending a
Yeah.
lot of money on these things just to occupy my boredom? But really, I say that travel is important to me, and I say my family is important to me. How come I'm not spending more money and more time in those areas?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's so easy too in a consumer society to like to think something's important to you, like a hobby or something, but really just get caught up in it as a way to sort of like feed your need to consume, to like ward off like depression, getting the next big thing and stuff. But really looking at, like what activities, what things would I really enjoy, regardless of like what I had to start it with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I really like that book that we read called Dare. Now,
Yeah.
granted it was
Good.
about anxiety, but it was talking about anxiety. Most of us get caught in these anxiety loops because we're afraid of being anxious. And I look at it the same way as a depression loop. Like I used to get stuck in the depression loop because I
Oh
was
yeah.
I was terrified of being depressed. Like, and I would do all
Yeah.
this stuff to try and not to be depressed, and then I would just get depressed because I was so scared of it that like I couldn't
Yeah.
I couldn't work myself out of it. And one of the things I love about that book is just like the whatever mentality. Like, just be like, whatever, fine. If I get depressed, I get depressed, and then I just have to work myself out of it. Like, but having that mentality to be able to progress through it helps, I think, is one of the greatest ways to not get trapped in it.
Well, no, it's a great point too, because I think that the crucial thing is that, when you're afraid of it, it's controlling your life. Literally, it's controlling your life, everything you do, and that control is going to ensure that you stay in that loop. But if you accept it, or if you just say, whatever, today's going to be a depressed day, tomorrow might not, right? Because tomorrow's a new day. Or this hour is going to be anxious, but tomorrow, next hour might not be. You let yourself feel it, but you don't let it control you. And I think that because you can still think, then you can still act, you can still have that control. And I think this is what so many of us struggle with, right? Is what are the things controlling us? What are the things, causing us to do things that or people and whatever, that we might not necessarily even want to do, or don't even identify as the person doing them in some cases. Like, do you want to be a person who's depressed all the time? Do you want to be someone who's negative all the time? Probably not. Most people, I would argue, don't.
Yeah.
That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to keep that in mind, I think, to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And being able to, dude, reading is like one of the greatest gifts ever.
Awesome. It is awesome. I know. I love reading.
So, like, I mean, you've always been a very, very strong reader. And for me, it's something that's kind of developed over my life, particularly the past few years when I made it a goal to read a certain number of books every year. Because the average American reads one book a year. That's like uncanny. Like, if you want to be above average, read 2 books a year, and already you're above average. Like, crazy.
Dude, it's funny. I still have a lot of like actual books, and I was actually looking for something to read the other day, and I realized I've read everything that I have. I don't have a library of like unread stuff. Yeah. I mean, I have Kindle, obviously, so I can continuously access books, which is, obviously there. But yeah, I was like, wow, I have no idea how many books I've read in my life. And I really know this year's been a good one too. It's good. I think it's good. It's healthy. It can be escapey sometimes, but I think in a positive way, because you're always using your imagination, even if it's for fun. You're always exercising creativity to some extent, when you're doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, they say the more you learn, the more you earn. So, like, if you want to make more money, just start learning more. And there's so much out there. Like, I think it's such a shame that growing up in the traditional education system, you're just like forced into reading this garbage, like Canterbury Tales and The Scarlet Letter. And like, yeah, sure, those were great books 200 years ago when there weren't other books to read. Like, and granted, like, when somebody's passionate about that stuff, let them read it. But for goodness sake, like, it's garbage for a child to have to try and read that stuff. Like, let them read something fun.
Well, I think they should it's a shame, but they should let kids, especially now with digital, they should let kids just pick what they want to read, have access to it and read that. Like, because like we talked about, there's so many good biographies and stuff, especially like, and those can give you, I think, which other books can, and fantasy or fiction can to an extent, but like those books can give you a perspective that you can utilize to understand your own life, to understand what's possible, to even get a sense of what you might want to do. And yes, other books can do that, but biographies very explicitly, I think, can, because they're about a real life, right? Or memoirs or whatever.
Yeah. Or even, so like, I've heard it say that if you read 5 books in any subject area, you'll be one of the top most experts in that area. And that's like a really, really simple thing to do. Like, just 5 books.
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
But like, that's how low the bar is for being considered an expert in any one particular field. So like, let's say during high school, ask kids what they want to be when they grow up. And then say, okay, over the next 4 years, you have to read 5 books in that subject area. 1 book a year. Like, but that would be like, kids would be inspired to read that stuff. They would learn stuff. They might not make the mistake. Like, they might figure out that what they think they want to do isn't actually what they want to do.
Yeah. God forbid we changed it though and did it differently.
Man, we can't do that. System's already broken. We're not going to change it. It was broken for me. It's going to be broken for you too.
Damn it. Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, I don't understand readings, and it doesn't even, it's funny. Like, it doesn't even matter what you read. Just reading is good in general. I think it is. It is. It's amazing. I think how little people do it, but
Yeah.
I get it. I
Because,
mean, I guess I get it. It's stressful, but it's easy. It's so easy to just sit and watch TV. But I don't know. Reading can be so much more engaging too.
mhm. Well, so okay, so the reason I brought that up was I just started another book called Endure about this bow hunter guy who runs ultra marathons. But like,
Oh God, they're insane. I had a friend whose brother ran them. They're
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, uh,
Dude, he ran
and
like a marathon every morning to train. I was like, how do you do that every morning?
yeah,
So much running.
it's crazy,
It's like a
and
lot.
yeah, and so like, but this guy's whole mentality was what really drew me to the book. He has this hashtag keep hammering, how like basically he's like it's just gonna suck, like just expect it to suck, and but you just got to do it anyways. And it's like there was also this saying that I heard, that like the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. And it's just like the idea that it's gonna suck. Like everybody wants things to be so easy and just given to you on a silver spoon. But the people who are really moving forward, who are really exceptional, are the ones who just understand that it's gonna suck and you just got to do it no matter what.
Yeah, it is funny that everybody does. We all want things to be so simple. And like it's life. It's not gonna be. There's gonna be so many obstacles, twists, turns, hardships. And like the fact is, I think the question of then, like, what do you really want out of your life? Because it's up to you. You can do anything, but you have to do it. And that's the hard part is doing it. And you don't have to, I mean, you can do it to whatever level you want, but you have to decide that. But you can't just complain when it doesn't work out when you haven't done anything. It's like, it's not supposed to just happen. But I think, I read a bunch of studies that like, all this talk of like exceptionalism and stuff and like, you can do whatever you want and stuff has been really damaging to people. Because like it fosters that belief that like it should, well, if I'm exceptional, right? If I can do anything, it should be easy, right? By extension, I'm special. And it's like that thinking, well, not, I guess it's positive in one way is really harmful in a lot of others because it makes you feel like you're worthless or you're bad or you didn't live up to people's beliefs or expectations of you.
Yeah, like the whole self-esteem movement now, after I don't know 30 years of it, they found out it's really terrible and it destroys people's self-esteem. But
Yeah.
but also like the idea that you should get something without working for it. Like just and that's just I think anything that somebody has really gotten, they've had to work for, or else they take it for granted and they don't really care about it.
Yeah, no. And I think, look, I think everybody, like, we might all have our different skill sets or like, or tendencies where we might be slightly better at certain things than others, maybe. But that doesn't mean it doesn't involve work. And it doesn't mean doesn't involve time and commitment and dedication and choices. And I think to think that just because somebody is gifted in a certain area makes it easy, I think is totally missing it and setting yourself up for failure.
Mhm.
And it's an easy way to sort of dream, I guess, because it makes it seem like if I just find that one thing, but you're never going to find it. And so it's this constant, like, but
Oh,
it's hard to
that's
deal with.
I think that's a really big deception, like a societal lie that we have, that you're gonna find this one thing or that you're gonna find this one person. Like there was this book called What If, where basically this guy, he was a physicist, he turned into a cartoonist, but people would just ask him these crazy questions like uh
Hey, don't, yeah.
yeah, and so one of these was like, what if there is only one person in the universe who's your soulmate? What are the chances of finding them? And it's just like the most insane thing because there's billions of people in the world. So like the chance
Yeah.
of you finding someone, if there wasn't a coordinated system for like going past the most people possible, is it's almost infinitely no. Okay, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you had this one system where there were just these lines of people just crossing people as fast as possible, then you could maybe reasonably after like 10 years or something find your soulmate of doing nothing but that for 10 years. So like the mere notion that there's only one person, or the mere notion that there's only one thing you're supposed to be doing, is just absurd. And the reason I mention this is because this is something, when I was younger, this plagued me, was that I
Yeah.
knew
Oh, yeah.
kids. I knew kids who had found their thing, something that they were very good at, that they loved doing. Like I knew this one kid who was an amazing artist, and he was just like so involved in it. Like that was all he wanted to do, and he was just really, really good at it. And I was so jealous of him. And then there was another kid who was like a semi-pro or professional mountain biker. And I was so jealous because this was another thing where like he knew what he was supposed to do very early on, and he was very, very good at it. And it just plagued me because like I was good at a whole bunch of stuff, but I didn't know what's my thing. Like, when am I going to find that thing? And I think getting older, it's just like, you just need to keep trying. Like, if you haven't found your thing, you just haven't tried enough stuff, and you just haven't like really gone out there after that many things.
No, I think that's a good point though, because I think when we believe there's only one person, we also think that when we meet somebody, if we think it's right, that it should then be easy thereafter. Because like, oh, they're perfect for us, so there should be no work. But it misses the point that you can also like friendships get better over time. You know, romantic relationships can get better over time and different and change and even be a different relationship than it was before, right? But still good. And I think we miss the changing nature of the world in our lives. When we think that way, we think things should be like almost fixed. And I think too with the, you know, I felt that way too about finding that thing that you're good at, or finding a thing. Like I was good at lots of stuff too, and like, but I didn't know which one to do, right? And it's like, so I think if you're more open to it, it gives you freedom to try a bunch of different stuff and realize that you can do a bunch of different stuff. And you might have various reasons for choosing some stuff over other stuff, right? Like, I mean, it just depends on kind of a lot of factors. And I think that should matter too, you know, and that you can change it, that it's not fixed. It doesn't matter. Nothing in our lives is fixed, you know?
Yeah, I think that's something that's really cool, and I always find that quite inspirational. Like the true rags to riches stories, not the person who bought a lottery ticket and won the lottery, but like the person, Og Mandino. He wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World. He literally, I think it was in Chicago, he was living on the street. He was broke. He was living on the street. He would go into libraries to like warm up, like so he wouldn't die. And then eventually one day he's like, maybe I should just start reading some of these books. And he started reading some of the books. And then from that, he wrote on some of the best-selling books ever on motivation and personal development. But like the true rags to riches stories, because you see that it's possible for one, it's possible for anyone. And like, no matter where you are in life at this moment, this isn't the end of your life. Like, if there's still breath in your nostrils, you can still make it. So you just keep on going, and you learn from these things.
No, I think that's the important thing, is that, you know, no matter where you are, it can get better. You can always make it better. It can always get better than it is now. And I think that's the coolest thing. You know, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Your best years are ahead of you, no matter how old you are.
Always, right? Yeah. Always. It always can improve. It always can get better. The next day can always be brighter. I like that.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say in this episode?
Nah, I think that's it. I like that ending. I like that spot. It's like it puts a little cap on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or wraps a bow around it, or whatever the hell that saying is. Yeah.
Just remember, it keeps getting better from here, and you just gotta take one day at a time. That's all.
You can always improve it. Yeah. I think that's a good one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Existential Stoic podcast. You can make sure to check us out on YouTube and all the podcasting services. I'm Randy. That's Danny. Later, Danny.
Hey, Randy.